Harriette Chiggai is the president's cabinet-level advisor on women's rights. Or is it gender?
Women's rights, you find gender comes in because it's very difficult to talk about women and girls and forget to talk about the male.
Very good.
So you find at the end of the day, you still have to talk about everybody and support everybody.
Welcome to Kenya's biggest conversation again.
Thank you very much, Latif.
Good to have you back here, occupying the hot seat. Now, since the last time you were here, you have taken oath of office so you can sit in cabinet meetings. You'll tell us what that is all about, how the experience has been, sitting there with these gadgets and you're discussing matters of national importance. But Siti, welcome her with the day's proverb, tafadhali.
Yes, our proverbs for the whole of this week are from the Federal Republic of Somalia. When a grown-up falls, children laugh. When they behave being the children fall, they cry.
When a grown-up falls, children laugh. When they fall, they cry. What do you make of that, Ms. Chiggai?
Well, I think it's the element of how we perceive society. As parents, you should never give up on your children. And as children, it's normal to be naughty. So at the end of the day, it's the bigger person who's the parent who needs to fashion how society looks like. I will look at it from that angle.
City, another new perspective.
Is this
again going deeper?
Every time you ask people to give you their views and perspectives on a proverb, they enrich the proverb.
Yep.
Because they're telling you exactly how that proverb talks to them. They're telling you what they see. And that is important. Yes.
Adult be the adult.
Yeah, you please quickly be the adult. Your time to be a child
is gone.
If you want a child, you should have shauri yako. Now become adult.
That's a good one.
Yeah.
That's a good one. So how is it now attending cabinet meetings? And what exactly do you do as an advisor, but then you're sitting in cabinet?
Well, our position as advisors, senior advisors sitting in cabinet, already, there's a court process and we cannot delve much into that.
Yeah.
But basically, the executive order, number one, constituted the three most important offices in the executive office of the president. One of that is the Council of Economic Advisors, headed by ND. The other one is the advisor on matters security, that is Ambassador Monica Juma. And the other office is the Office of the Advisor on Women's Rights. You realize that our sitting in cabinet, really, we saw the oath of office. That means the oath of secrecy. Our work to sit in cabinet is to listen in, to version, and to see how our work interlinks in terms of advisory. And I think it's important. It is important that on call, we sit in attendance, because how then do you fashion your advisory if you're not in line with everything that is going on? We should also be able to enrich cabinet memos where possible. Where there are gaps, we should be able to see that, And it's a new norm, and I think the presidency should actually be allowed to fashion how his office should actually operate. So it's the same thing. Any CEO who comes into office sees the gaps, sees where he wants to enrich the office, and you go ahead and do that.
Right.
So basically our sitting is in attendance and as advisory, but also the offices we carry the mantle of cabinet status. So you see, we are not breaching any constitutional provisions per se, because we are not taking any CS seat. It's the fashion of how the offices should look like.
Okay.
So for me, I think it's rich, and it's something that Kenyans should embrace. And if anything, we should be able to fill the legal gaps and allow futuristic that the presidency, and you look world over. If you look at the US and how the US is fashioned, the president walks around with his advisory team, and it cuts across board. And you'll realize even in federal states, you have such offices in place, and they hold a lot of mantle. Ambassador Gupta from Gita from the US was here. and she actually paid us a courtesy call. And it's just how you fashion the offices, a learning entity of how these offices should also operate. So where is the weight? How do we fashion our offices so that we can feed into the programs that the presidency have, and at the same time help the society at large? So I think it's important. Yeah.
All right, so obviously the president saw it fit to have an advisor on women's rights. And I mean, it's clear where some of those things come from. Talked about the fact that gender is included in this. So, I mean, very simply, what do you do?
Oh, well, a lot. Good question. And I will bring in the aspect that we have the Ministry of Public Service, Gender and Affirmative Action. But you realize if you look at the executive order, the ministry's policies, we have done so many policies in this country, but all those policies are somewhere. Who is then dissecting that policy and ensuring that it fits within all sectors? And my work generally has been to fusion that, Who does coordination in terms of various flagship projects for His Excellency on matters women, on matters children? There has to be a way of fusing that before it even trickles down to ministries, and then the implementers. So you realize in a society like ours, we have now the presidency where flagship projects emanate from, the thinking around it, the fashioning of those projects, and then you're bringing now the technical teams within the ministry. The government is playing an all-of-government approach in terms of delivery, because that has been the missing link. So where does this interconnection of all these ministries sit? So you'll realize that as advisors, we all have our social, or rather our thematic areas that we need to work. For me, it's social. Social, you have Ministry of Labor, you have Ministry of Public Service and Gender, there's health and education. Yeah. So when it comes to matters of women and girls within those ministries, who's doing coordination? Who's doing the fusing of any new programs that is coming in place? So you see, the advisors have a lot of work in terms of thinking, fashioning programs, aligning them. By the time you see the president is launching a product, we are happy because we know that the product now is ready to go.
You've done the background
because
work.
The background work has been done, the proper teams have been put in place, the champions have been aligned, and now it's taking off. So once it takes off, we are happy because then it's all systems gone, hands on deck, work must be done. So for us, it's a well planned how to fashion activities. They normally say before you see the end product, there's a lot of cooking that has been going on. There's a lot of cooking, there's a lot of thinking, the recipe has been put in place, up to the chef, then the chef does the cooking, then there's now the matron who does the presentation on the table and laying out, and then there's the owner of the house who will come and welcome you to partake what is on the table. So before that, there's so much that is working behind the scenes that actually needs
all the way
to be
from
done.
farm
All the way from farm
to fork.
Yeah.
Harriette, it's been what, 8 months, 9 months now?
9 months.
9 months.
We can use 9 months because now we're in a new month.
All right.
Yeah.
Can you give us a couple of, because the last time you were here, you explained to us, your coordination role, and there are many things that you have to do with all these ministries and all these programs to see that things are done in the right way, and particularly that there is proper mainstreaming of women affairs in all of them. Can you give us some case studies of what you've been able to work on so far and how they've gone?
Oh, there's a lot. Within the 9 months, we've done quite a lot. I had indicated that my office is looking at various pillars in terms of delivery. And pillar number 1 is leadership and governance. And under leadership and governance, 2/3 comes number 1. And you've seen in all discussions, 2/3 is there. Why is it important to this community or in this country? It's simply because a society that leaves half of its population behind, your utility of the resources that you have is also minimal.
Yeah.
And world over, you've realized that if you fashion policies leaving other people who are supposed to be seated on that table, you miss out on one or two things. And this is just not on women alone. There's persons with disability, there's the youth. Globally right now, the discussions that are ongoing, we were at UN Deliver 2 weeks ago, and the voices of the young people is now something that everybody is talking about. So you cannot plan for person X without getting to know what their needs are. So you realize it's important that you bring all these people on the table when it comes to this. So on 2/3, it's just not about leadership in parliament, but we are looking at private sector, because the private sector also plays a big role in fashioning economic empowerment in this country. And we have realized that if we don't accelerate, World Economic Forum placed a report the other day and said for us to achieve 2/3, it's going to take 100 years. And that is cutting across board, both
for
private...
For the world or for Kenya?
The world over. So you can realize it's a geo issue. It's not about Kenya alone. And they have realized if you don't include everybody, all these big things we are talking about, we will not realize them. So the question then is, how do we accelerate the representation of women, youth, persons with disability, everybody? And we discovered we have to actually we have to be very intentional about it. So the Kenyan government signed with the World Economic Forum the intention to accelerate, the participation of women cutting across board, and the pillar that we picked most is MSMEs. So you realize it's just not about leadership. There's so much that needs to go into that. And it requires a lot of work. So my office championed that together with the Ministry of Public Service and Gender and Affirmative Action. And now we are moving into creating the program, MNE, and we cannot leave out the Ministry of MSMEs led by CS Chelugui. And we can also not leave out the Ministry of Trade and Investment, because within MSMEs we are saying we want to accelerate women economic empowerment through MSMEs, but at the same time it has to be economic empowerment and investment. So what does that entail in terms of building the bottom-up economic agenda? Women must join circles. Women must be trained on financial literacy. We are including banks. We have big tier banks which have women programs, but we are saying it's high time that we see the end product of the reports that you give. So how are banks going to fusion and ensure that all this progress or processes that we are putting in place, by let's say in the next 3-4 years, we'll have actually reached a minimum number of, let's say, 2, 3, 4 million women.
Right.
So it is that whole inclusive circular kind of momentum that we want to push.
So does this framework have deliverables?
Oh yes.
Milestones?
Oh yes.
What should we be seeing
targets.
And by when?
We are cooking. Just like I said, we are in the cooking pot. So we have signed the letter of intent. All the ministries now will have to sit. The technical teams are already procured, so that by the time we have an enriched program, it is end to end. So that MITI, Ministry of Trade and Industry, will be tasking them, you have to fashion a component for women, and the target is about 2 million women.
Okay.
Ministry of MSMEs, the champions of women economic empowerment, or rather the champions of the bottom-up agenda through the Hustler Fund, will be telling them we need to fashion and have this number of women put together in circles. And we'll also go to the private sector. KEPSA has done also a lot of work. So you'll realize we have to work with the private sector as well and ask the women in construction, the women in trade and investment, how do we build up the numbers? The women in banking, we launched our product with the women lawyers in finance. So what is the role of professionals also in advancing and building into the government agenda? So public service, in as much as we want also to prep and grow, we're also saying we cannot leave the private sector behind. So how can we all come together, work, and deliver for government? You know, that is the question we ask every day. And we also look at ourselves and say, in as much as we're saying we are delivering for government, it is service to the people. So we now want to look at government as a team player. How do we fusion that? Because in many cases, government has been placed there at the corner. But now we are saying, no. All of us are government. All of us are government. You're government. You see, when you're sitting here in this media, wherever, you have to churn programs to say that this is our government. How then do we support this government to deliver on its mandate? Positive criticism is very important, because only then can we look inward and say, Latif said it's a good point. And because it has come out, let us address it. So I think that is how I look at things. So that is one of the pillars.
Okay.
We've also realized women economic empowerment is the bedrock for us to demystify poverty margins in this country. Why do I say that? When we look at problems like FGM, when we look at problems like violence against women, you'll see poverty is in the center of it. You know? And how can we fashion this?
Sanitation as well.
Yes, sanitation.
Yeah.
So, and then culture. But our cultural practices, when I've talked to many women who do the actual cutting when it comes to FGM, it's an industry. You can imagine if I cut 100 young girls at 10,000 per girl, how much is that? So it's money. So how do we get these women who are in this industry, fashion them to change that practice and move from cutting young girls, which is affecting their health, to now being productive and still earn? It's a lot of work. So we have to do that. And you know, the government signed up that by 2026, we'll have ended FGM.
Yeah.
You know? And it's cultural.
Yeah.
It's a hard discussion to have, but we must have this discussion to save the young girls.
Some of the difficult discussions that you are having and things that you're implementing now, I mean, looking at what would have been largely male-dominated industries and saying it's possible to spur women to then be involved in those. And one of those is construction, which you've cast your eye on. Why that? And how are you seeing that you can incorporate women more to their benefit for themselves as individuals, but then also for a more global outlook in terms of the country?
Yeah, all right, thank you very much. The government has put in place measures to put affordable housing. And the fulcrum of that is job creation. But when we talk about job creation, and I was talking about the private sector and now government, what can private sector do to plow into this? It's still the same infusion. Women in construction, when you look at the statistics which have been given, we have about just 3%. 3% of women.
What?
Of women within the construction industry.
Is it construction or development?
It's 3% as construction artisans.
So what we're saying is that of all the workers in the construction sector, only 3% are women.
Yes. And then you have about 7.3% who are female contractors. So those are artisans. And we have about 15.5% who are quantity surveyors, and 17% who are actually registered. And when you look at globally, we are talking about 13% of all construction companies are owned by women globally. And that is why I'm saying these problems are not Kenyan problems. They're actually global. But Kenya has now come down and mirrored and spotlighted where the problems are. And now we are saying we must try and bridge this gap. So women in construction, and because we want women to benefit from this, you'll realize that we need to debunk the narrative that the construction industry is a male-dominated area. And now request or ask women, the majority who are doing the low-income jobs, to now come out, bring themselves together, and even tap into the STEM courses that the government has put in place. I was talking with P.S. Hinga the other day, and one of the engineers at the public works. And they gave me an interesting analysis that when it comes to construction, a majority of women will go to carry the the building material, the water, and all that. But there are aspects of construction that we look on the other side and say it's for men. One of them is plumbing. I can assure you we don't have so many plumbers in this country. If I look at women and we say we want to educate so many women within the STEM program that the government has put in place to get into the plumbing industry, and we fusion that and say, can we target at least 1 million women? Out of the 1 million, can we then target the program that the government has to export labor and say we need to export some of these women? And when we export these women, we also realize there's a whole society system where they'll be registered. And then they are forced to invest back home and support the children at home.
Yeah.
It is a whole cycle. It is hard work, but if we fashion and intensify how we want to do this, it's doable. And we have 4 or 5 years to do this. We have now 5 years. So we've already done the groundwork. We've mapped out where we want this. Then it's all systems go. Let these women go and get trained. We have institutions like Build Her, I think it's an NGO, which is doing a lot of work in training women in construction. So what is Build Her doing? Build Her has looked at artisans and said, within fusioning of a building, there's something called tiling. Tiles for a very long time is a male-dominated kind of job. But the beautification of putting tiles together, a woman's eye is very important. Painting work, if they're trained to do painting well, and you'll agree with me, just to redo painting of this wherever is a lot of money.
Yeah.
So if we can fashion women to start thinking that, hey, wait a minute, we can actually do painting. We can actually put ceilings. We have now moved away from this kind of ceilings. I've seen there's a new eco-friendly ceiling. It is almost film. It can be put up within a very short time. Come measurement, plug the ceiling in. 1 person, 2 people, you sit, within 5 minutes, it's up. And it's a very strong ceiling.
What you're saying not only makes sense, it is delightful to listen to, and it's aspirational, and it is good. However, what about the level of interests that women have? Is there an overflow of people, of women who are interested in this line of business? Is it something that has been there for some time? And if it has been, are we saying that those interests have not been given an avenue to flourish, or that they have been extinguished, or they have been thwarted in the past, and now pathways must be open so that they can actually flourish?
Yeah. All right. For me, I see it as a knowledge gap. If you don't know, you don't know. Yeah. And that is why we are now going out of our way to tell women there's an opportunity which you can tap into. You can fashion yourselves to grow beyond what you are, or to grow beyond, if we have, let's say, women-led, female-led entities, yeah, built by female. It's female-owned and it's female-powered. What does that mean? Women need to know, if you register a business, there's something called AGPO certificate. Women need to know that within the construction industry, there's more you can do other than brick and mortar. Yeah, because how many brick and mortar projects do we have? So you'll have the person who will get the brick and mortar projects, but you're also telling women that there's so much that goes into the industry, in the construction business, that you must leverage. As we speak right now, road construction, the government has stopped any new projects. It's completing the existing ones. Within a road construction, which is heavy lifting in terms of financing, how many women, I've just said it attracts about 3% of women. How many women-led entities can actually put up a construction project of a magnitude of about, it's in billions of shillings, isn't it?
Yeah.
Now, the financial institutions come in, that is the banks. And now we are asking banks, you have all these PR, gender, lens budgets, and gender-sensitive loans. But we are not, when we see the data, it is actually not speaking to that. So we also here to tell the banks, wafungue mfuko. You know, they should open those ports for women so that if women get these tenders, they're actually able to finance these projects. Now, I learned the other day that save for the fact that a road has to be built, there's something called beautification of a road. You know, the piping, the drainage systems. We've seen Mombasa Road now has flowers. All those things.
Pedestrian
walkways, you know. All that forms the larger construction. We're also trying to tell partners who pump in money for huge production and construction of such magnitudes, they have to put a percentage for women. And we have to educate women to tell them there's actually a percentage for women. So you guys can actually bid. So women shy away because they don't have the information.
Okay. Are you saying that mainstream construction is what women should be involved in? Or are you saying that around the periphery of beautification and things like that, and the softer side of all of this is what should then be reserved for women?
We are asking them to participate all around.
Okay.
If you don't get the big project, find the middle level.
Go for the other.
If you don't get the middle level, go for the 4-tier. If you don't get that one, there's also these other ones, which is still, if you can get 1% of 1 billion, how much is that?
But then
5% of 4 billion, how much is that? You know? So women should not shy away. But at the same time, I'm saying the financial institutions should be ready and willing to invest.
Harriet, there's a time we hosted some ladies here, and they were basically just doing a review of the AGPO program, the Access to Government Procurement Opportunities. And from their reports and what they had looked at, they realized that, yes, the government has indeed been promoting and executing and implementing the 30% policy on AGPO. The government has been doing a lot of work on that. This is making sure that at least 30% of any government procurement is earmarked or is set aside for women, youth, or persons with disabilities. But then their main issue was the ticket size of this 30%. That they will always give those small jobs. If it's about, like you said, a big construction project, that only those small, small ticket items like road beautification,
sweeping roads,
installing the street lights is what is left to the AGPO. The other big ones, there's nothing like that that's going to be earmarked for this affirmative action program. And they were saying, how about you actually also put some of these big ticket items in AGPO so that we as women, as youth, as persons with disability can also apply knowing I can take up 100 million shilling project or a billion shilling project?
Very well put. That is also our concern. One thing you'll realize that for you to prove you can do something, you must start somewhere. Right?
Right.
For me to prove that I can do a project of a certain big magnitude, I'll have demonstrated that I did a small project that has grown me to this level, and now I can move to the next level. So AGPO was actually meant for the youth, women, but startups. So if you have managed to do an AGPO project, you then should move from that bun and go to the next level. And that is now where we are. And that is why I'm saying financial institutions should now be able to fund.
Harriet, I have to ask. The interest factor has to come in, because if you have affirmative action and you have all these plans and there aren't enough people who are interested, you will be exactly where you are now. Is there an overwhelming interest so that this affirmative action push then has an avenue through which it can be channeled? Because if the AGPO program was begun a while ago, that proof of concept, that particular item has been ticked there. But again, the question is still being asked: were there enough women who showed an interest and have taken an interest in this? Because then there's the other aspect of, if you're involved in a big project of a certain magnitude, affirmative action, there must be women who have qualifications to be involved in it, because the learning process at that level would then have to be women being part of that big project, so that beyond them having their own businesses, they're able to participate so they know.
And that's why I'm saying information is power. First, do you have this information? I've just given here the percentages. Only 3% of women are in construction.
Yeah.
The data that we have.
Yeah.
Globally is 13%. And that is why now we are telling women, start making yourselves, when you talk to banks, for a long time they were telling us, but women are not bankable. Why? They don't have property.
Collateral.
You've seen government is now giving out title deeds. Culturally, we're also telling our brothers and sisters, bequeath your female, allow your sisters to own property. It's cultural. So in as much as the government is saying we want to give title deeds, we have culture that is holding us back. Financial institutions are saying, for me to give you this loan, you must give collateral. So financial institutions are saying women are not bankable.
Yeah.
But we want to demystify that. We are now saying we have to have an intent from where the money is coming from to how it is fusioned, trickling down. We have, let me give an example like African Development Bank, because I've engaged with them a lot. And the important thing is that they have a gender desk. They have an affirmative, a leverage on finances that go to affirmative action. When this money is there, if you do not even know the money is there, how are you going to leverage on that? You get what I'm talking about?
That's true.
So we must be able first to know where is the source of this money. How can we negotiate that the affirmative funds are more friendly to female-led, female-built, female-powered initiatives? The banks are coming in there. And I can mention a few banks. Kenya, we have about 5 or so banks which are big on gender lens. But now we want to tell them, you guys have been having about 10 billion fashioned towards women projects. But when you look at the big projects, we are talking about 20 billion and above. So it means if a bank has fashioned 20 billion or 5 billion for women, we are still telling women we can only finance the lower cadre kind of projects.
Yeah.
So that is why I'm saying, even if there are 5 companies that want to tap into these finances and everyone is capping the level of funding and finances that can be given to women to a small margin, it is still the same problem.
Still marginalized.
It's still marginalized. So we are saying all hands on deck, global approach, fusion within our local approaches, cultivate it in our institutions, cultivate it in our minds within management. You saw Equity the other day, which is very big on women. They are actually discriminating against the same women when it comes to pay. So those are the kind of things we are talking about. We should be able to have an holistic approach to these issues. We should not just look at one item, tick a box and say we have a policy. Everybody has a policy. But now we are saying lift those policies from where they are and shelve them. Let us debunk these policies and let us now start saying we are achieving.
So which institutions are you working with in order to achieve this? Because really, the goal is good, the goal is noble.
Yeah.
To achieve it, you have to partner.
Yes.
So which institutions are you partnering within government?
We are partnering with very many institutions. And the one thing I think I need to give women hope is that the affirmative funds now, everybody is warming up to that. Everybody is warming up to the fact that it is important that we include women because the backdrop of economic development rests within the lower cadre. And you find there are so many women within that banner. Then let us build this lower cadre to leverage and keep growing. They cannot stay down there. If you started a kiosk, in the next 2-3 years, we should see you in the supermarket. That's the kind of fashioning we want. But you can only leverage and come from a kiosk to a supermarket if funds are available. So my call then would be, let's unlock the affirmative funds. Let us unlock. If the gap is education, if the gap is intellect, if the gap is how to utilize these funds, save, then let's unlock that gap. And within the next 10-15 years, we'll actually see the hard work that is being done now.
Yeah.
So sometimes the things that we want to do cannot be actualized now, but in the next 10, 5 or so years, we should be able to see that.
But like you said,
yes,
all hands on deck,
Yes.
but also all hands on deck in monitoring that the gains are safeguarded.
Exactly.
So for instance, I could say that with AGPO, there are very many gains. There are very many women and youth and persons with disability organizations that came up to apply for contracts through AGPO. Unfortunately, when you talk about pending bills and those that have faced frustration and those that have actually even gone under, very many are those particular groups. Those ones that are getting low cost contracts and jobs that still ended up not getting paid. So the example here is, I saw Ndu applying. I've seen what Ndu has gone through. Why would I want to go that route? The same thing, if we don't have a proper program, for example, with this affordable housing project across the country, hundreds of thousands of houses are being built, but there is no proper plan that says this is the number of women that need to be employed in various cadres in this affordable housing project, and let us see them getting paid, let us see them progressing, that example will move us nowhere.
On pending bills, let me just say I haven't interrogated them in depth, but we've had the president talk about fusioning and putting proper audit to ascertain that all pending bills are legit. So in as much as they are suffering from that, they have to be patient with us, with the government.
They have been.
Yes.
Patient.
And
okay. So what the point is?
And once, I'm sure there are those which have been audited. Yeah. So the question then would be, how fast can they be paid? That is pegged on the budget allocations, and it's pegged with the institutions which are handling that. So from where I sit, I would not be honest to say I've interrogated pending bills as a person. But it is a problem that we all acknowledge that it's there. It is also a problem that is pulling us behind. And you've had the president saying it's something that needs to be addressed. So it's something that needs to be addressed. And the rallying call then is, why would you take up projects? Yeah, and you've seen the current government is now putting in place projects pegged on PPT's investment, because we've realized this injection of huge sums of money into projects, you're actually killing the basket of, how should I put it, the liquidity ratio. For the first time, county governments have been paid 100%. I think we should talk about these things. The governors are happy because now they have the money. So at the county level, I expect all these payments to be done. So the question then is, where is the pending bill sitting? Is it at national government or at county?
Both.
If it's at county, and then you see that is also the other aspect where everybody is talking about finances, public finances. Management of public finances has been a big problem. It didn't start now. It is historical. If you look at universities...
If I may just cut you short for a while.
Yes.
We had a gentleman in the studio here who heads an organization of people who actually work with governments, county and national.
Yeah.
And one of the things he told us, which was actually honest, was that the national government actually pays their debts quite well. He said it here.
That is very positive. I think you should echo that again.
That is why I cut you short to explain to you.
Yes.
Their beef with the national government, they said the national government pays you.
Yeah.
When they have the money, they pay you. Their problem is with county government.
County government.
Yes. And yet, even with the county governments, we have county governments like the county government Mombasa who are paying their debts. This very audit that you're speaking of, they did. They verified.
Quick.
And they're paying.
All right.
CIA as well.
CIA has moved along that same line. So it isn't as though we're in this deep dark hole and there's no light at the end of the tunnel. There's light, even if it's a glimmer of it. There is. But when it comes to this subject that we're talking about with women, it's an important one.
Yeah.
Because when you think of the rural areas and you think of the backbone of the rural areas and the economy, women are at the center of it. So anything, because some of these projects we speak of, they happen in the rural areas. How then do we involve women in it so that the money that trickles in from that particular economy can actually then be transferred into the economy of this so-called rural area that we keep speaking of.
Well, that is very positive in terms of first, the most important thing first is to understand where we are, where we are coming from, where we are, and where we want to go. Yeah. So it is very important that national government actually pays.
They pay.
At the county level, then we need to understand what are the problems in all these counties, and those problems, how can they be mitigated. So it will be also important to have the chair of COG to actually sit on this hot seat one day, because I'm sure she's very good and she's been able to steer COG very well, and within COG I'm sure there's a chair of finance. So
she's been here. She's also coming. May I suggest something?
Yes.
Harriette. Now that the cabinet decided that one of the ways that we're going to deal with these pending bills is by constituting another new, bigger task force that brings in Law Society, brings in, Architecture Association, and brings in these ministries. How about you advise that they start by auditing all AGPO contracts so that you clear those ones? Because when you deal with AGPO, you're basically dealing with persons with disability who have pending bills, women and youth who have pending bills. Start with clearing those, and you will find that majority of those, because they are AGPO, it's tickets of about 100 million to 200 million.
Yeah.
Clear those ones. Out of this 600 billion shilling thing we're talking about, you'll only end up with maybe 10 billion shillings. Pay them. That's a lot of money coming into the economy. That's a lot of small businesses that are keeping alive. Those businesses can then apply and go to the banks that you're working with and all the other institutions. They can go and borrow to do bigger projects.
Yeah, good point. And I'm sure that will form part of the TOR. And I'm sure the setting up of the technical team to look into this was very deliberate, because the government is looking at getting solutions, not creating more problems for its people who are already suffering. So, and I'm sure that is a point, and thank you for that. I think we will ensure that that is part of the TOR.
Okay.
Yeah.
So as we conclude,
yeah,
circling back into the issue of women in construction and the work that you're doing, what exactly are you focusing on in the next couple of weeks or months?
The Ministry of Transport, led by CS Murkomen. We had a good conversation, and we actually agreed to function a one-day seminar for women in construction. It is a conversation that not only do we want women, but we also want the younger women to come out and be part of the conversation. This will then feed into a bigger conversation next year, which all the players within the construction industry have to fashion and start having annual women in construction seminars which can build women. So we will be championing the education industry, the TVET institutions, STEM. Where are we? So it's a good way of making the public get to know, and at the same time also get to identify the women who are doing very well, and even ask women to support other women. Like the county governments, we have 7 governors. The county government's budgets, our key, we are very key to see how the budget has been done with a gender lens, And for me, it is, there's nothing as beautiful as women supporting women. Someone joked the other day when we were in Kigali Women Deliver and said, if you're actually a woman and you do not support another woman, you actually have a special place in hell. And I thought, what a way, to start the seminar. But it's actually true, because if we have many women, and most of us have leveraged our support and our growth from women who have been there before us. Personally, within cabinet, there are women I look up to. Ambassador Monica Juma is such a great mentor, and the years of experience she has, nobody has. So you can only be so clever to leverage and get to learn something from her.
Yeah.
And I mean, women need to now fashion themselves to be actually the next ear or the pillow that other younger women can leverage and look up to, you know.
Yep.
So for me, I'm really keen to see how we can build the women going forward. And I'm sure the women who are already in the leadership platforms should be able to take this mantle forward. So mine is to ask the women in construction to participate in this one-day conversation.
Okay.
CS Procurement should be sitting here anytime, I think, also to fashion how he would propel the government agenda, and we build women, together. And I thought, what a good way to do this, because if you get everybody discussing issues of women, mainstreaming women in everything that we are doing, then we're on the right track, because it still fits. Exactly. So it's focused conversation, end products, proper coordination, and at the same time we have M&E. We're able to monitor ourselves and say, we have achieved this much. We tried. Good. We came from here. This is where we are. That is where we want to go. We're going. Yes.
Harriette Chiggai, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank
Harriette is the President's Senior Advisor on Women's Rights. She's been our guest.
This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.